Chapter 87. Looking at the monster core in his hand that was slightly larger than a thumb, Xianxia couldn't help but smile. He said in a low voice, "It really is a Class 2 monster core. Looking at the purity of this energy, it's much stronger than the monster cores of the magical beasts in Kargath Academy. It seems like the magical beasts in the Magical Beast Mountain range are much stronger than the magical beasts in Kargath Academy. That's not unreasonable." After putting away the monster core, Xianxia lowered his head to look at his body. Currently his body had completely turned dark green, but even so, Xianxia's body wasn't injured in the slightest. Because he had been using the special cultivation method recorded in the Azulate Sword Codex to temper his body since he was young, his body was extremely tough. Therefore, although the poison spat out by the poisonous scorpion could make Xianxia feel pain, the poison was unable to invade his body. In addition, Xianxia had deliberately used his Saint Force to counteract the poison's damage to his body. As a result, although Xianxia's body was currently covered in a layer of dark green poison, his body was completely fine apart from feeling a bit of burning pain at the beginning. Xianxia looked around and listened attentively for a while before muttering, "There shouldn't be any water nearby, so there's no way to clean this thing on my body. Looks like I'll have to take care of it carelessly." Next, Xianxia plucked some leaves from a tree and used them to clean the thin layer of poison on his body. He then took out a new set of clothes from his spatial belt and changed into them. Although it was rare to see human figures in the vast Magical Beast Mountain range, Xianxia still didn't have the hobby of being naked. After changing his clothes, Xianxia directly left. He didn't bother with the corpse of the poisonous scorpion lying on the ground. Although the corpse of a magical beast and some of its important parts could be sold for quite a bit of money, this poisonous scorpion was only a Class 2 magical beast at most. It wasn't all that valuable. Even if he sold it, he wouldn't be able to get much money. Moreover, Xianxia had quite a lot of purple coins on him, so he didn't care about that little bit of money at all. Although the magical beasts that grew in the Magical Beast Mountain range were much more powerful than the ones that grew in Kargath Academy, the number of magical beasts that roamed around here was much less compared to Kargath. After all, although the Magical Beast Mountain range wasn't the largest in the Tianyuan continent, it still occupied an extremely vast area. The magical beasts were scattered throughout the mountain range, so it wasn't impossible to encounter multiple magical beasts in the same place. It was just extremely rare. Xianxia slowed down his pace for the entire afternoon, carefully venturing deeper into the Magical Beast Mountain range. Even when night fell, Xianxia only discovered 2 magical beasts. Aside from the scorpion that he first encountered, which was a Class 2 magical beast, the other 2 were both Class 1 magical beasts. At night, a bright moon hung high in the sky, sprinkling down bright moonlight. However, the Magical Beast Mountain range was still pitch black. It was so dark that one couldn't even see one's own fingers. The dense foliage blocked the sky, preventing the weak moonlight from shining in. In a place where the terrain was relatively flat, a bonfire burned fiercely, constantly flickering in the pitch-black night. Xianxia sat cross-legged in front of the bonfire, holding a branch in his hand. A large piece of meat was skewered on the branch, and under the constant roasting of the flames, the color of the meat was constantly changing into a golden yellow. Drops of fat were squeezed out of the meat, dripping into the bonfire below with a sizzling sound. After filling his stomach, Xianxia took out some medicinal powder with a special smell from his interspatial ring and sprinkled it all around. This medicinal powder was something that every mercenary who entered the Magic Beast Forest had to prepare. When they rested at night, they sprinkled it all around to effectively prevent the majority of poisonous insects and snakes from harming them. Of course, this medicinal powder was only effective against ordinary wild beasts. It had no effect on magic beasts at all. After sprinkling the powder, Xianxia directly jumped onto a large tree and sat cross-legged on a relatively flat branch. He then took out another type of white powder with a faint fragrance from his space belt and casually sprinkled some on his body. This white powder could effectively isolate the scent on his body and prevent it from leaking out at night and attracting wild beasts. After all, whether it was wild beasts or magical beasts in the Magical Beast Mountain range, their sense of smell was especially sensitive. Although this powder couldn't completely block out the scent emitted from Jianshan's body, it could at least hide from the smell of ordinary wild beasts. This was because there were many wild beasts in the Magical Beast Mountain range besides magical beasts. The reason why they were called wild beasts was because they didn't have magic cores in their bodies, and their strength didn't reach the first rank. It was the same principle as humans who didn't condense a holy weapon in their bodies to become saints. Although wild beasts weren't very strong, and those who had the courage to enter the Magical Beast Mountain range could easily hunt them down, no one would want to be disturbed by wild beasts when they were cultivating or sleeping at night. Therefore, almost every mercenary who entered the Magical Beast Mountain range or wanted to spend the night in the wilderness would prepare some of this powder. After the safety preparations were completed, Xianxia directly took out a large amount of magic cores from his space belt. Holding a few pieces in each hand, he slowly closed his eyes and began to absorb the energy within the magic cores to cultivate. The energy within the magic cores leaked out at an extremely terrifying speed and finally rushed into Jianshan's body through his pores and nostrils. Such a rapid absorption of the energy within the magic cores naturally put some burden on Jianshan's body, causing his pores to swell painfully. He felt as if there wasn't a single part of his body that didn't hurt. However, this kind of pain was nothing to Xianxia, who had an extremely strong willpower. The energy within the magic cores carried a wild element, and under Jianshan's crazy absorption of the energy within the magic cores, the wild element within the energy quickly gathered in his body. If not for the fact that Xianxia had been using the energy of heaven and earth to transform his body from a young age, causing his internal organs and meridians to be much stronger than others, just the wild element within the magic core's energy would have caused serious damage to his body. As the huge amount of energy within the magic cores was constantly absorbed by Xianxia, the wild element within the energy also gathered in Jianshan's body more and more. However, when the wild element reached a certain level, a suction force suddenly appeared from Jianshan's dantian, pulling the wild element towards his dantian. In the end, it was absorbed by the two spots of light, one purple and one green. On the Tianyuan continent, if a fighter began to cultivate by absorbing the energy within the magic cores, they would first have to remove the wild element hidden within the magic cores, leaving only pure energy for themselves to absorb. During this period of time, just removing the wild element within the energy would take quite a lot of time. Moreover, the wild element within the energy could not be completely removed, leaving behind certain hidden dangers within the body. As a result, although there were many fighters on the Tianyuan continent who began to cultivate by absorbing the energy within the magic cores, there was no one who could endure it endlessly. They would have to stop every few days or even a dozen days to completely refine the energy within their bodies in order to prevent any future troubles. It could be said that Xianxia did not have to worry about absorbing the energy within the magic cores at all. Perhaps it was because of the two spots of light in his dantian, but as soon as the energy within the magic cores entered his body, the wild element hidden within the energy that was intimately connected to the energy would be automatically separated, allowing Xianxia to absorb the energy without any worries. This gave Xianxia an extremely huge advantage in terms of cultivation compared to others. As the energy within the magic cores was constantly absorbed by Xianxia could clearly feel the ball of Saint force in his dantian grow at a visible rate. Although it seemed very slow, Xianxia knew very well that this speed was already fast enough compared to others. If he cultivated at this speed, it would not take long for him to break through the Saint realm and reach the Great Saint realm. The next day, when the sun shone through the dense foliage, Xianxia slowly opened his eyes as he cultivated on a large tree. Afterward, he leapt down from the tree and landed firmly on the ground. Xianxia moved his body and sensed the Saint force in his body with his mind. Afterward, he could not help but smile with satisfaction. He could clearly feel that the Saint force in his body was much stronger than when he had just condensed his Saint weapon. According to his estimation, his strength had probably reached the level of an intermediate Saint. Although he was only an intermediate Saint, it had only been less than a month since Xianxia had condensed his Saint weapon and broken through to the Saint realm. If others knew that Xianxia had used less than a month to reach the level of an intermediate Saint, they would definitely find it hard to believe. After casually eating something to fill his stomach, Jianchen set off on his journey once more. Time quickly passed, and in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. At the base of the mountain range of magical beasts, a youth dressed in coarse clothing was currently locked in a stalemate with a pitch-black, 1 meter tall, 3 meter long, leopard-type magical beast. The young man held a slender, silver-white sword in his hand. His tall figure stood there, but he gave off a sense of steadiness like a mountain. His face was covered in mud and dust, so it was impossible to see his appearance from the surface. Chapter 88. Roar. Suddenly, the magic beast that looked like a leopard let out a low roar. It stomped hard with its hind legs, leaving a shallow mark on the ground. Its whole body turned into a black shadow and shot toward the young man who was less than 10 meters away from it. In midair, the black leopard opened its bloody mouth. Its exposed sharp teeth flashed with a cold light that made one's heart tremble. The young man's eyes revealed a trace of a sneer. The silver-white sword in his hand suddenly emitted a layer of hazy white light. Then, with a wave of the sword, a silver-white light separated from the tip of the sword and shot towards the Black Panther's wide-open mouth. The speed of the sword was very fast, like a flash of lightning, but the Black Panther's reaction was not slow. Just as the silver-white light was about to reach its mouth, the Black Panther's head slightly tilted to the side. It just so happened that it dodged the oncoming sword ray. Even so, the sword ray still brushed past its head, leaving a clear bloody wound on the Black Panther's furry head. However, the Black Panther's speed did not decrease in the slightest, and it still maintained its previous speed as it shot towards the young man in front of it. The corners of the young man's mouth curled up slightly, as if to show a trace of ridicule. Then, a fierce killing intent flashed in his eyes, and the silver-white slender sword in his hand turned into a flash of lightning, piercing towards the Black Panther's throat. The speed of the sword was extremely fast, so fast that the Black Panther had no time to dodge. Before the Black Panther could even react, the silver-white sword had already pierced its throat. In the end, because of the Black Panther's forward momentum, the sword that pierced its throat continued to penetrate deeper and deeper until the Black Panther's throat reached the hilt of the sword. The other end of the sword was already covered in blood. It broke through the back of the Black Panther's neck and stabbed diagonally. Drops of blood continuously dripped onto the Black Panther's back. The young man slowly pulled out the long sword that had pierced into the Black Panther's body. Then, the blood that stained the silver-white long sword strangely gathered at the tip of the sword. Finally, the blood dripped from the tip of the sword and dripped into the soil on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the long sword that was originally covered in blood had become silver and flawless. And on the hilt of the sword, there were two unusually clean words: breeze. This young man was Jianchen, who had been wandering alone in the Magic Beast Mountain Range. Unknowingly, he had been in the Magic Beast Mountain Range for a month. During this month, Jianchen had been staying in the periphery of the Magic Beast Mountain Range. He had not entered the depths of the Magic Beast Mountain Range, nor had he gone out. During this month, Jianchen had been constantly moving about in the periphery of the Magic Beast Mountain Range during the day and cultivating at night. During this time, Jianchen had been doing everything he could to increase his strength, unlike when he was in Changyang Prefecture, where he had slowed down in order to make himself less outstanding. As a result, as Jianchen's strength increased as much as he could, his own strength rapidly increased as well. After a month of cultivation, he had broken through mid and late saint, reaching great saint. In just a short month, Jianchen's strength had increased from a novice saint to a great saint. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar. This was because if an ordinary person wanted to go from a novice saint to a great saint, it would take them at least 2 or 3 years. Even some heavenly geniuses would need at least a year to go from a novice saint to a great saint. But Jianchen's terrifying cultivation speed was unheard of in the Tianyuan continent. Without anyone knowing, he had already set a record. But this record was destined to be buried, and no one would know about it. After becoming a great saint, Jianchen's battle prowess had also increased by leaps and bounds. At this time, killing second-rank magic beasts was a very easy task for him. Now, he had set his sights on third-rank magic beasts. With the light wind sword in his hand, Jianshan lightly flicked the head of the Black Panther. Immediately, a round bead stained with a little bit of blood and white powder jumped out of the Black Panther's head and was caught by Jianshan. He did not pay attention to the specks of blood and white dust on the bead. He casually pulled up a large amount of grass from the ground and wiped the blood and dirt off the bead, revealing a translucent bead. Looking at the bead for a while, Jianshan's face revealed a trace of a smile as he muttered to himself, "Today's luck is really good. This is already the 12th second-rank Magic Beast Core." Putting away the Magic Beast Core, Jianshan didn't pay any attention to the Black Panther's corpse and directly left the area. Jianshan carefully advanced through the magical Beast Mountain range. Although his strength had reached the Great Saint Realm and could be said to be much stronger than before, he still didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. This was because he was very clear in his heart that even though he was only in the outskirts of the magical Beast Mountain range, there were still some powerful magic beasts that came out from the depths of the mountain range. They weren't something that the current Jianshan could deal with. Jianshan could be said to be very vigilant in the magical Beast Mountain range. He was always paying attention to the surrounding situation, especially the swamps hidden in the ground. These swamps were difficult to see with the naked eye. Looking from afar, they looked no different from normal land, but once you walked over, you would be swallowed by the swamps. Once you fell into a swamp, it would be very difficult to escape without someone's help. At this time, Jianshan's ears slightly moved. Immediately, a trace of joy appeared on his face as he couldn't help but exclaim, "Water, there's the sound of flowing water. There's actually water nearby." Saying this, Jianshan impatiently rushed towards the direction of the sound. After a short distance, when Jianshan passed through a patch of weeds, he finally encountered a flowing stream. This stream was about 3 meters wide and wasn't deep. The stream water was so clear that one could see the bottom. Even some of the brightly colored stones at the bottom of the stream could be seen clearly. When he saw the stream, Jianshan's face also showed a trace of joy. This was the first time he'd seen a water source since entering the magical Beast Mountain range. And after staying in the magical Beast Mountain range for so long, the water he'd prepared in his space belt was almost finished. If he still couldn't find a water source, Jianshan planned to leave this magical Beast Mountain range. Jianshan looked around. After confirming that the surroundings were safe, he took out several water bottles from his space belt. Then he stood in front of the stream and dug to get water. After filling the water bottles, Jianshan directly took off his clothes and jumped into the stream to wash off the sweat that had accumulated on his body these past few days. Chapter 89. Just as Jianshan's light wind sword was halfway through its stab, a golden, vine-like object shot out from the water towards Jianshan. When Jianshan's light wind sword collided with the golden vine-like object, Jianshan's falling posture came to an abrupt halt. His entire body was suspended in the air while the tip of the light wind sword accurately struck the head of the golden vine-like object. This scene lasted for 2 breaths of time. Suddenly, from the forest beside the stream, another golden vine shot out towards Jianshan at an extremely fast speed. Jianshan's expression didn't change. Using the light wind sword as a support point, his entire right arm suddenly exerted force and his body immediately leapt into the air, landing firmly on the side of the stream. As soon as he landed on the side of the stream, Jianshan immediately put on his clothes. After putting on his clothes, Jianshan raised his head to look at the golden vine that had attacked him. He saw that this golden vine was actually a snake that was only as thick as a wrist. Its entire body was golden in color, and on its body, there were several silvery white lines that extended from the head to the tail. The body of the golden snake was extremely long. Just the part that was exposed to the air was at least 5 meters long. But when Jianshan noticed the silvery white lines on the golden snake's body, his expression froze for a moment. Then, as if he had thought of something, his expression greatly changed and he couldn't help but cry out, "Silver-striped golden snake! Silver-striped golden snake!" This was something that Jianshan had read about in the Academy's library. The silver-striped golden snake was an extremely rare species of snake. It was known as the emperor of all snakes. Even in the entire Tianyuan continent, the number of silver-striped golden snakes rarely reached 3 digits. The silver-striped golden snake's value didn't lie in its rarity, but in its body. Whether it was its meat or its blood, they were all extremely valuable. This was especially true for the venom that it contained. In the Tianyuan continent, it was a type of venom that was priceless. This was because if this venom was refined, it could even kill a peak heaven saint master. Furthermore, if one wanted to remove this venom, there was no other way other than using the blood essence of the silver-striped golden snake. Once infected by the venom of the silver-striped golden snake, even a radiant saint master would be helpless. Although Radiant Saint Qi had miraculous healing properties and could easily remove many other types of venom, the silver-striped golden snake's venom could only be temporarily suppressed. Furthermore, the silver-striped golden snake's body was completely different from other snakes. The silver-striped golden snake's body was extremely long, but very thin. It was said that some silver-striped golden snakes that had reached the 5th rank of magical beasts had bodies that were over 100 meters long, but their thickness was less than a foot long. A Class 6 silver-striped golden snake could freely control the size of its body. At the very least, it could shrink its body to a meter or two. Class 6 golden-striped silver snakes were extremely powerful as well. It was rumored that they could fly in the air and burrow into the ground. Their extremely potent venom was so potent that even Heaven Saint Masters feared them, not daring to touch them so easily. It was recorded in the book that 100 years ago, in the Sacred Empire, a rank 6 silver-striped golden snake slaughtered a royal city with a population of over 10 million people in less than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. Not a single person was left alive in the entire royal city. Everyone was poisoned to death, and even their corpses were completely corroded by the poison. The only thing left behind was a foul stench of blood that spilled over the entire city. For this matter, the Holy Emperor's empire had sent out over 10 Heaven Saint Masters to kill the silver-striped golden snake. However, the battle had only lasted for half a day. Out of the 10 Heaven Saint Masters, 7 had died. The remaining ones were either heavily injured or poisoned. Not long after the poisoned Heaven Saint Masters had returned, they had all died. This matter had even alarmed the saint rulers of the Holy Emperor's empire. In the end, the saint ruler had personally taken action and engaged in an earth-shaking battle with the silver-striped golden snake. Only then had the silver-striped golden snake been repelled. However, it had only been repelled and not killed. From this, it could be seen just how powerful the silver-striped golden snake was. Recalling the information he had read about the silver-striped golden snake in the Kargath Academy's library, Xianxia's gaze was filled with shock and disbelief as he studied the tiny golden snake in front of him. His heart began to beat uncontrollably. No matter what, he had never thought that the silver-striped golden snake, which was extremely rare on the entire Tianyuan continent, would actually be in such a remote area. Moreover, he had encountered it in the outskirts of the magical Beast Mountain range. Xianxia carefully scanned the body of the golden snake that was only as thick as a wrist. In the end, he had no choice but to admit that what he had encountered was indeed a silver-striped golden snake. Crap, why did I encounter this thing? Xianxia quickly calmed down, but he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Although he had never seen a silver-striped golden snake with his own eyes, the information he had read in books was more than enough for him to understand. With his current strength as a great saint, encountering a silver-striped golden snake would undoubtedly be a very troublesome matter. Xianxia's gaze became serious as he stared at the silver-striped golden snake that was only a dozen meters away from him. His eyes were filled with vigilance as he gripped the light wind sword tightly. He knew that the silver-striped golden snake he had encountered was not an ordinary magical beast. If he made a mistake, his life could very well end here. This was definitely the most dangerous situation he had encountered since entering the Devil Beast Mountain range. It was so dangerous that Xianxia didn't even have the confidence to make it out alive. If he had encountered other powerful magical beasts, Xianxia wouldn't have been able to defeat them. At least he would have had the opportunity to escape. But ever since he had recognized the silver-striped golden snake, he had already given up on the idea of running away. Although his speed was extremely fast, to the point where he could surpass a Saint Master with the wind attribute. When facing a silver-striped golden snake, Xianxia knew that with his speed, he wouldn't even be able to carry its shoes. This was because the silver-striped golden snake's speed in a straight line was extremely fast. Although it wasn't the fastest magical beast out of all the magical beasts on land, the silver-striped golden snake's speed in a straight line was definitely in the top 3. Among humans, unless they had the wind attribute Saint Force and were stronger than the silver-striped golden snake by several levels, they wouldn't be able to catch up to it. If I encounter a silver-striped golden snake, I definitely can't run in a straight line. Otherwise, only death awaits me. I just don't know how strong this silver-striped golden snake is. If it's a Class 1 magical beast, then the threat it poses to me would be a lot smaller and I might even be able to kill it. If it's a Class 2 magical beast, then even if it poses a threat to me, it shouldn't be a problem for me to escape from it. Xianxia thought to himself. Right now, he could only hope that the silver-striped golden snake in front of him wasn't too strong. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to leave this place alive. Xianxia took less than a breath's time to think. At this moment, the silver-striped golden snake suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a gray poisonous mist. It quickly floated towards Xianxia. Just as the poisonous mist appeared, all the plants in a 10-meter radius immediately withered. Even some of the thick branches were changing at a visible rate, their life force quickly draining away. Just as the gray mist appeared, Xianxia actually felt a wave of dizziness. At the same time, Xianxia's body also felt a wave of weakness. Feeling the changes in his body, Xianxia's eyes flashed with a trace of shock. The silver-striped golden snake's poisonous mist could actually spread through the air, directly polluting the air. Now, Xianxia finally experienced the terror of the silver-striped golden snake's poison. No wonder this poison could easily kill a Heaven Saint Master. Without any hesitation, Xianxia immediately bit the tip of his tongue. The heart-wrenching pain from the tip of his tongue finally cleared his dizzy mind. Following that, he quickly retreated and circulated the Saint Force in his body. Only like this did the feeling of weakness in his body gradually recede. After regaining his composure, Xianxia's expression had already become heavy. Although he had not fought with the silver-striped golden snake, from the poisonous mist it had spat out, he could already estimate that the silver-striped golden snake's strength was at least at the second step. Seeing the poisonous mist quickly float towards him, Xianxia did not hesitate at all. He immediately held his breath and lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. His body gracefully shot into the distance. Just as Xianxia moved, the silver-striped golden snake's body also moved. It turned into a golden streak of light and chased after Xianxia at a speed several times faster than Xianxia's. Although the silver-striped golden snake's body was only as thick as a person's wrist, its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already caught up to Xianxia and opened its mouth wide to bite at Xianxia's neck. Just as the silver-striped golden snake's mouth was about to bite down on Xianxia's neck, Xianxia suddenly lowered his body and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. At the same time, he turned around and stabbed the light wind sword in his right hand towards the silver-striped golden snake's neck. On the blade of the light wind sword, there was a layer of hazy white light. At the tip of the sword, a large amount of sword chi gathered together to form a dazzling white light. This was the full strength of Xianxia's sword. The light wind sword was able to pierce through the silver-striped golden snake's body without any hindrance. However, Xianxia's face didn't reveal the slightest trace of happiness. Instead, his expression became extremely ugly. This was because the light wind sword hadn't managed to pierce through the silver-striped golden snake's skin. It hadn't even left a single mark. What a strong defense! Xianxia sucked in a breath of cold air, and his face had already become a bit paler. Because of the special cultivation method he cultivated, his attack power was already very strong. Although he only had the strength of a great saint, his attack power wasn't much weaker than a Saint Master's at all. However, his full-strength strike actually didn't leave the slightest mark on the golden silver-striped snake's vital points. Now, Xianxia had already realized that the golden silver-striped snake in front of him was at least a Class 3 magical beast, or even a Class 4 magical beast. It was simply not something he could fight against. Chapter 90. While Xianxia was still in a daze, the silver-striped golden snake's small head opened its mouth and bit towards Xianxia's neck once again. Its sharp teeth were covered in a grayish-white liquid. Realizing that the silver-striped gold snake was about to bite him, Xianxia immediately moved his head to the side, dodging the silver-striped gold snake's jaws. He then circled around to the back of the silver-striped gold snake. With the light wind sword in his hand, he once again stabbed towards the silver-striped gold snake's weak point. The light wind sword accurately pierced the silver-striped golden snake's weak point, but when the tip of the sword came into contact with the silver-striped golden snake's skin, it was unable to go any further. This thin layer of golden skin was like an indestructible fortress, preventing Xianxia's full-strength attack from leaving a single mark on the snake's body. Seeing this, Xianxia's expression became even more grim. His mood had also completely sunk after seeing the effects of his attack. The silver-striped gold snake's powerful defense was something that Xianxia could do nothing about. His powerful attack was like a child scratching an itch in front of the silver-striped gold snake's powerful defense. It couldn't do any damage to the snake at all. Without any hesitation, Xianxia immediately withdrew his light wind sword and kicked off the ground. Before the silver-striped golden snake could even react, his body was already high up in the air. After confirming his direction, he used the tree branches as leverage to fly towards the depths of the magical beast mountain range. The silver-striped golden snake's strong defense made it impossible for Xianxia to kill it. Therefore, Xianxia could only fly towards the depths of the magical beast mountain range in hopes of encountering a powerful magical beast that could tie down the silver-striped golden snake. Only then would he be able to smoothly escape. Although this would be very dangerous, other than that, Xianxia had no other choice. Although Xianxia knew that there would be quite a few mercenaries entering the mountain range of magical beasts, and that he might be able to borrow their strength to delay the silver-striped gold snake, the mountain range of magical beasts was just too large. Even if he wanted to meet some mercenaries here, it would be an extremely difficult matter. Xianxia's body was in the air. Using the tree branches as leverage, he quickly flew towards the depths of the magical beast mountain range. Behind him, the silver-striped golden snake, which was only as thick as a wrist, was relentlessly chasing after him. Its almond tongue was constantly swallowing, and its body was at least 6 to 7 meters long. The silver-striped golden snake's body was very long, completely disproportionate to its size. At the very least, Xianxia had not been able to clearly see the silver-striped golden snake's entire body. But according to his estimates, the silver-striped golden snake in front of him was at least 50 meters long. Xianxia's flight path maintained N's shape. Along the way, he did his best to choose a direction with obstacles to block the silver-striped golden snake's pursuit. Roar! Suddenly, a tiger's roar came from not too far away. The sound rapidly approached Xianxia. Not long after, a 3-meter-long black tiger appeared in Xianxia's line of sight. Its eyes were filled with an ominous glint as it stared at Xianxia. However, just as the black tiger was about to pounce on Xianxia, a small golden snake, only as thick as a wrist and 6 to 7 meters long, appeared in front of the black tiger's eyes. When the black tiger saw the small golden snake, it was as if it had been struck by lightning. The hairs on its body stood on end, and the originally ominous glint in its eyes shrunk in an instant. It looked at the silver-striped golden snake with eyes full of fear. Afterwards, it didn't dare to stay here for even a moment longer and immediately fled with its tail between its legs. Although the silver-striped golden snake was a snake, there were very few magical beasts that dared to offend it, even if they were placed in a group of magical beasts. This situation occurred many times in the mountain range of magical beasts. Along the way, Xianxia also encountered quite a few magical beasts. However, when these magical beasts saw the silver-striped golden snake following closely behind him, they were immediately scared to the point of pissing their pants. They didn't even dare to make a sound as they fled with their tails between their legs. Not a single magical beast dared to provoke the silver-striped golden snake that was only as thick as a wrist. After an hour, Xianxia had already neared the depths of the mountain range of magical beasts. The forest here was becoming more and more luxuriant, causing Genshin's advance to be greatly obstructed. Behind him, the silver-striped golden snake was still in hot pursuit. It seemed to have already recognized Genshin. Even though they encountered quite a few magical beasts along the way, it continued to pursue Genshin without letting go. SSS. The silver-striped golden snake's head turned into a blur as it once again bit towards Genshin. Genshin was constantly paying attention to the situation behind him. His two legs immediately kicked off the trunk of a nearby tree, and his entire body shot to the side, dodging the silver-striped golden snake's attack. Seeing Genshin dodge its attack time and time again, the silver-striped golden snake seemed to be enraged. Its pair of small eyes flashed with a dangerous light, and a long golden tail stretched out from the grass, whipping towards Genshin at an extremely fast speed. Genshin's face slightly changed. At this time, there was a thick tree right next to him. Genshin did not hesitate and kicked off the tree again, his entire body shooting towards a nearby tree with dense foliage. The silver-striped golden snake's long and thin tail also followed Genshin's movements, and with a speed even faster than Genshin's, it caught up to Genshin in the blink of an eye, and then wrapped its long and thin tail around Genshin's waist. With the snake's tail wrapped around his waist, Genshin turned pale with fright. The light wind sword in his hand suddenly glowed with a silver light, and he immediately stabbed towards the snake's tail. However, the silver-striped golden snake's outer layer of skin was very strong, and Genshin's sword didn't even leave a mark on it. At this time, a disgusting smell assaulted his nostrils. The silver-striped golden snake's mouth was opened wider than its body, and like a bolt of lightning, it bit towards Genshin's neck. In an instant, it had arrived at Genshin's neck. Genshin was shocked. Without any time to prepare, he immediately stabbed towards the silver-striped golden snake's mouth with his light wind sword. However, the silver-striped golden snake was very cunning. It nimbly turned its head, dodging Genshin's light wind sword, and then bit Genshin's left shoulder. Those sharp teeth pierced deeply into Genshin's left shoulder. Feeling the pain from his left shoulder, Genshin's face immediately turned pale. The silver-striped golden snake's poison was very strong. Once bitten, the only antidote was the silver-striped golden snake's blood essence. Apart from that, there was no other way. Even Saint Chi was unable to neutralize this poison. Furthermore, the silver-striped golden snake's skin was very strong. With Genshin's strength, he wouldn't even be able to leave a mark on its skin, let alone extract its blood essence. Seeing the silver-striped golden snake biting down on his left shoulder, Genshin's eyes suddenly became crazed. Affected by his emotions, Genshin's spirit became more active than ever. Faintly, Genshin's mind seemed to be filled with images of his surroundings. However, this feeling was very faint, so faint that if Genshin didn't pay attention to it, he wouldn't be able to sense it. But in his current state of agitation, he didn't notice it at all. Genshin let out a roar towards the sky. He didn't care if he could break through the silver-striped golden snake's defense. Raising the light wind sword in his hand, he slashed towards the silver-striped golden snake's head. In the instant that the light wind sword slashed out, Genshin's spirit seemed to connect with the light wind sword in his hand. It was as if the two had completely merged into one. At this moment, a strange feeling suddenly appeared in Genshin's heart. It was as if his spirit was the sword, and the sword was his spirit. At the same time, in Genshin's dantian, the purple and green spots of light began to flicker. A faint purple and green light emitted from the two spots of light. Without Genshin noticing, the purple and green light slowly spread out into his brain. Hum! The light wind sword in Genshin's hand let out a soft hum. Immediately after, a powerful and swift sword chi was emitted from the light wind sword, completely enveloping the light wind sword. At this moment, it looked as if the light wind sword was surrounded by a thick fog. The sword itself was blurry and difficult to see clearly. Ding! The light wind sword fiercely chopped down on the silver-striped golden snake's head. This time, the light wind sword's powerful and sharp sword chi easily cut through the silver-striped golden snake's extremely tough skin. Immediately, a deep wound appeared on the silver-striped golden snake's head. Bright red blood began to flow out from the wound. Hiss! The silver-striped golden snake cried out in pain. The huge mouth that was biting onto Jianxin's shoulder suddenly loosened. The snake's head moved away from Jianxin as it stared at Jianxin with its small eyes. Seeing the bloody wound on the silver-striped golden snake's head, Jianxin's face froze for a moment before revealing an expression of ecstasy. To think that I was able to break through the silver-striped golden snake's defense. Jianxin's heart was filled with both joy and surprise. Under his careful control, his spirit and the light wind sword became tightly connected. At this moment, the feeling of his spirit and the light wind sword becoming spirit became even clearer in Jianxin's heart. It was as if the light wind sword was his life, his soul. As the connection between Jianxin's spirit and the light wind sword deepened, the sword chi on the light wind sword became even more powerful. It was as if this powerful sword chi was completely reliant on Jianxin's spirit. Without thinking too much about this mysterious feeling, Jianxin let go of the light wind sword in his right hand. The light wind sword that was enveloped by the sword chi did not fall down. Instead, it strangely floated in the air and slowly rose up. Finally, it stopped 3 feet away from Jianxin's nose. The tip of the light wind sword was pointed directly at the silver-striped golden snake. Hum! A long and clear sound came from the light wind sword. Chapter 91. The silver-striped golden snake cautiously stared at the light wind sword floating in the air. Its tongue continuously flickered in and out of its mouth. The light wind sword's powerful sword chi made the silver-striped golden snake feel a sense of danger, so it didn't dare to recklessly attack. Jianxin slowly closed his eyes and carefully felt the strange feeling of controlling the light wind sword. Then, with a thought, Jianxin controlled the light wind sword to become a silver bolt of lightning. Without anyone controlling it, it shot towards the silver-striped golden snake at an unbelievable speed. So! The long sword pierced through the air, bringing with it an ear-piercing screech as it pierced towards the silver-striped golden snake's head. Before the silver-striped golden snake could even react, the light wind sword had already pierced through its head. Immediately, a deep wound appeared on the silver-striped golden snake's head. Bright red blood flowed out from the wound, dyeing the snake's head red. Jianxin was still tied up by the silver-striped golden snake's tail, but when he saw the wound on its head caused by the light wind sword, his eyes lit up with joy. Since he was able to break through its defense, didn't that mean that Jianxin had a chance of killing this silver-striped golden snake today? Immediately, Jianxin used the divine sword technique again to control the light wind sword to continuously attack the silver-striped golden snake. So, under Jianxin's control, the light wind sword became a silver bolt of lightning that pierced towards the silver-striped golden snake again and again. However, this time, the light wind sword was attacking the silver-striped golden snake's weak point. A silver-white light flashed in front of the silver-striped golden snake's body, leaving behind a deep wound. Although the wound wasn't shallow, it clearly didn't injure any of the silver-striped golden snake's vital points. A snake's heart was located at the 7th inch of the snake's body. Although the light wind sword had pierced through the silver-striped golden snake's skin, under the powerful defense of the snake's skin, the light wind sword had not been able to penetrate the snake's heart. Being attacked at its weak point, the silver-striped golden snake began to panic. It immediately lowered its body to the ground and formed a circle around its weak point to protect it. At the same time, the tail that was wrapped around Jianxin's waist also loosened. Without the snake's tail binding him, Jianxin's body fell from the sky and landed on the ground. As soon as he landed, a strong sense of dizziness attacked Jianxin's mind, but it was quickly suppressed by Jianxin's powerful divine sword technique. Using his right hand to support himself, Jianxin crawled up from the ground with some difficulty. Looking at his completely numb left arm and his body, Jianxin's expression changed slightly. He suddenly exerted force with his right hand and tore off his clothes. Jianxin's entire left arm and the left side of his chest had turned completely black, and it was spreading through his entire body at a visible rate. What a strong poison! Jianxin's expression suddenly sank. From the time he had been bitten by the silver-striped golden snake until now, It had only been 2 breaths of time. But in this short period of time, the poison had already spread to half of his body. Such a fast-spreading speed made Jianshan's heart jump. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that Saint Force was unable to suppress the spread of the poison. Thinking about how the light Saint Force could suppress the spread of the poison, Jianshan didn't hesitate to multitask. On one hand, he controlled the light wind sword to hold back the silver-striped golden snake, preventing it from continuing to attack him. On the other hand, he controlled the light Saint Force to quickly gather around him. Under Jianshan's full control, the Saint Force in the air gathered towards Jianshan at a frightening speed. When the Saint Force had gathered to a certain degree, a layer of hazy white light appeared around Jianshan's body. Furthermore, it was rapidly becoming stronger. In just a few breaths of time, the hazy white light from before had completely turned into a milky white light. It enveloped Jianshan's entire body, making him look like a white cocoon. Although the light was strong, it was not dazzling to the eyes. As the radiant Saint Force continued to pour into Jianshan's body, the poison that was rapidly spreading through his body finally came to a stop. The speed of its spread suddenly slowed down, but that was all. Although the radiant Saint Force had miraculous effects on healing and could easily remove most poisons in the world, the radiant Saint Force could only temporarily suppress the poison of the golden-striped silver snake. On the other side, the light wind sword had turned into a silver-white light and was constantly revolving around the silver-striped golden snake's body. The snake's small eyes were constantly flickering with light as it cautiously looked at the light wind sword that was constantly moving through the air. The silver-striped golden snake had already used its long body to protect its 7 inches of injury. Right now, the silver-striped golden snake was aware that its life was in danger. So, after the light wind sword had circled around the silver-striped golden snake a few times, it let out a sharp whistling sound as it pierced towards the snake's head once again. The light wind sword's speed was simply too fast. Under Jianshan's control, its speed was several times faster than when Jianshan was using his hands. Before the silver-striped golden snake could even react, the light wind sword had already pierced through its head. Hiss! The silver-striped gold snake let out a hoarse hiss in pain. Its tongue continuously flickered in and out of its mouth. Finally, it opened its mouth wide, and a thick gray poisonous fog continuously sprayed out from its mouth. Very quickly, it enveloped an area of a few meters. Instantly, the surrounding plants withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even some of the towering trees with extremely strong vitality were unable to resist this strong poison. Their entire trunks quickly withered, and the lush leaves on the trees turned a withered yellow as if it was autumn, falling down from the branches and leaves one after another. The poison fog spread through the air and continued to spread in all directions. Wherever the poison fog passed, the originally lush forest that was filled with life immediately withered. As soon as the poisonous fog appeared, Jianshan immediately stopped breathing as his body was enveloped in a milky white light. The silver-striped golden snake's poison was extremely powerful. Even Saint Force was unable to neutralize it. Thus, Jianshan was extremely wary of the poisonous fog. Using the poisonous fog as cover, the silver-striped golden snake did not continue to stay in the area and immediately fled. The light wind sword's speed was so fast that it was unable to catch up to it. This had already caused the infamous silver-striped golden snake to feel fear. In a situation where its life was in danger, the silver-striped golden snake had already given up on chasing after Jianshan. Seeing that the silver-striped golden snake was about to escape, Jianshan's eyes revealed a trace of anxiousness. Without any hesitation, he controlled the light wind sword to chase after it. Now that he had been poisoned by the silver-striped golden snake's venom, he needed the snake's blood to neutralize it. Otherwise, even if Jianshan could use his radiant Saint Force to suppress the spread of the venom, he would still die without a doubt. This was because the radiant Saint Force could only suppress the venom temporarily and could not last long. Furthermore, maintaining the radiant Saint Force consumed a great deal of energy, so Jianshan could not maintain it for long. The light wind sword turned into a streak of silver light and flashed through the forest like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, It had caught up to the silver-striped golden snake and viciously stabbed into its heart. Faced with the light wind sword's speed, the silver-striped golden snake had no time to dodge and was viciously stabbed into its heart. Just as the light wind sword pierced through the silver-striped golden snake's heart, the silver-striped golden snake's body suddenly trembled and its momentum came to an abrupt halt. Soon after, it let out a mournful cry and its entire body fell to the ground. Phew! Xianxia let out a long sigh of relief. His heart that was in his throat finally calmed down. His little life was finally saved. The light wind sword let out a sword cry as the tip of the sword separated from the silver-striped golden snake's heart. After circling twice in the air, it turned into a streak of light and flew back to Xianxia. Finally, it returned to Xianxia's hand. Looking at the light wind sword in his hand, Xianxia forcefully suppressed the joy in his heart and quickly walked towards the silver-striped golden snake's body. Right now, he needed to immediately absorb the snake's blood to detoxify the poison. Otherwise, in this magic beast mountain range, every second he wasted would mean more danger. His footsteps were a little shaky as he walked for about 50 meters. Finally, Xianxia arrived in front of the silver-striped golden snake. Looking at the silver-striped golden snake's body that was still unknown to him, Xianxia did not hesitate and immediately squatted down on the ground. With both hands, he lifted the silver-striped golden snake's blood-soaked body to his mouth and began to viciously suck on the blood. Gudong! Gudong! Xianxia's throat continued to move as he swallowed mouthfuls of the silver-striped golden snake's blood. As the blood slowly flowed down his throat and into his stomach, Xianxia could clearly feel that within the silver-striped golden snake's blood, there was a very special energy that flowed through his body. Whenever the blood came into contact with the poison would quickly dissipate, as if it was being assimilated. Chapter 92. Only when his stomach was filled to the brim with the silver-striped golden snake's blood did Xianxia finally stop absorbing the snake's blood. Ah! Xianxia raised his head and opened his mouth to let out a sound of pleasure. He then began to pant slightly. Within Xianxia's body, the large amount of silver-striped golden snake's blood had accumulated in his stomach. In the end, it was assimilated by Xianxia's blood at an extremely slow rate and was absorbed by his body. At the same time, the poison on the left side of his chest and his entire left arm was rapidly fading away at a visible rate. The jet-black color of his skin gradually returned to normal. Although the silver-striped golden snake's poison was incomparably potent and could only be neutralized by its blood, this type of poison was removed extremely quickly. Not long after, the poison in Xianxia's body was completely removed. Aside from the 2 small teeth marks that still remained on his shoulder, the color of his left arm and chest had completely returned to normal. Phew! Looking at his body that had completely returned to normal, Xianxia let out a long sigh of relief. He rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, he had successfully killed the silver-striped golden snake at the very last moment. Otherwise, even with the Radiant Saint Force suppressing the spread of the poison, he definitely wouldn't have been able to live for more than 3 days. After all, he couldn't maintain the Radiant Saint Force for too long. This was extremely taxing on his spirit. Slowly standing up from the ground, Xianxia sized up the silver-striped golden snake that had fallen to the ground like a golden vine. He felt a burst of excitement in his heart. In the entire Tianyuan continent, the number of silver-striped golden snakes that appeared did not exceed 3 digits. They could be said to be extremely rare. Moreover, the value of the silver-striped golden snake itself was extremely high. Without any exaggeration, although the silver-striped golden snake was extremely poisonous, its entire body was a treasure. It was said that eating the flesh of the silver-striped golden snake would not only increase one's resistance to various poisons, it would also strengthen one's body. Although it would not be as monstrous as the silver-striped golden snake's defense, it would still increase by quite a bit. As for the silver-striped golden snake's gallbladder, it was said to be an extremely high-grade medicinal ingredient. If it was combined with the essence blood of the silver-striped golden snake and refined using a special method, it would be possible to cultivate an impenetrable body, making one immune to all poisons in the world. Unless the poison was stronger than the silver-striped golden snake's gallbladder or other poisons on par with the silver-striped golden snake's gallbladder, none of the poisons in the world would be able to pose the slightest threat to a person with the impenetrable body. As for the silver-striped golden snake's venomous fangs, it was also a weapon with extremely terrifying killing power. Because it grew up in the silver-striped golden snake's mouth and was continuously soaked in the venom day and night, the silver-striped golden snake's teeth had slowly undergone a transformation. Now, the silver-striped golden snake's teeth had long been contaminated with a poison that could never be removed. Once it was injured by the venomous fangs, it would be the silver-striped golden snake's venom. Without the silver-striped golden snake's blood to detoxify the venom, the only result would be death. This venom was something that even Heaven Saint Masters could do nothing about. Of course, with the current venom of the silver-striped golden snake, it was impossible for it to kill a Heaven Saint Master in a short amount of time. However, it could make it so that the Heaven Saint Master would never be able to get rid of the venom. In the end, they would still die. The only antidote was the silver-striped golden snake's blood. Although the venom of the silver-striped golden snake was extremely potent, the strength of the venom was still related to the snake's strength. The stronger the snake, the more potent the venom. Once the silver-striped golden snake reached class 6, it would definitely be able to poison a Heaven Saint Master to death in a short amount of time. The skin of the silver-striped golden snake was not only soft, but also extremely tough. It was an excellent material for making inner armor, so it was extremely valuable. As for the venom sac of the silver-striped golden snake, it was the type that was priceless on the market. This venom sac could be refined into a colorless and odorless venom using a special method. This venom could avoid detection by poison detection tools, making it difficult for people to detect. Under this venom, even Heaven Saint Masters would not be able to escape. Furthermore, the only antidote was the silver-striped golden snake's blood. On the Tianyuan continent, the venom sac of the silver-striped golden snake had appeared in a few auctions. However, every time it appeared, it would be bought by a few people with special motives at an astronomical price. Silently recalling the information regarding the silver-striped golden snake that he had read in books, Jinshin's mood also surged along with the information in his mind. He was unable to suppress his excitement. This time, it was definitely his greatest gain since entering the magical Beast Mountain range. In particular, the impenetrable poison body was something that even Jinshin was moved by. Without the slightest hesitation, Jinshin immediately began to drag the silver-striped golden snake's slender body. Regarding the corpse of the silver-striped golden snake, Jinshin would definitely not leave it there like a normal magical beast. After expending some effort, Jinshin finally pulled the silver-striped golden snake's body out of the weeds and piled it together. Only now did Jinshin clearly see the length of the silver-striped golden snake's body. It was actually over 70 meters long. The strength of a silver-striped golden snake was determined by the length of its body. Starting from the 20-meter-long body of a Class 1 silver-striped golden snake, with every increase in strength, the snake's body would grow by 20 meters, all the way up to 100 meters at Class 5. As for the Class 6 silver-striped golden snake, it was already able to freely change the size of its body, so for Class 6 silver-striped golden snakes and above, their strength could no longer be determined by their body. As for the silver-striped golden snake in front of him, from the length of its body, it was obvious that it was a powerful magical beast that was about to break through to Class 4. Jinshin took out the spatial ring that had always been hanging on his body from his chest. This spatial ring had been given to him by his father, Changyang Ba, when he left Changyang Prefecture. The space inside was extremely large, far from what a spatial belt could compare to. And if he wanted to take away this 70-meter-long silver-striped golden snake, the only way was to use this spatial ring. This was because the narrow space of the spatial belt was simply unable to contain the silver-striped golden snake's body. However, if he wanted to put this 70-meter-long silver-striped golden snake into the spatial ring, it wouldn't be an easy task. Just as Jinshin was about to make his move, his expression suddenly changed slightly, and he abruptly turned his head to look behind him. He saw that in the direction of Jinshin's gaze, Several figures had parted the thicket and were walking out. And just as Jianshan's gaze was looking at them, those figures also discovered Jianshan's existence at the same time. Shit! Jianshan's expression changed slightly, and he cursed in his heart. He was afraid that more trouble was about to occur. There were a total of 20 or so people, and judging from their attire, they were a group of mercenaries. When these mercenaries discovered Jianshan, their expressions all froze. Meeting a person here had clearly brought them some surprise. But soon after, their gazes were attracted by the silver-striped golden snake that was coiled around Jianshan. Walking at the very front of the group of mercenaries was a middle-aged man who looked to be around 40 years old. When the middle-aged man's gaze fell on the silver-striped golden snake, his brows couldn't help but slightly wrinkle, and he revealed a pondering expression. Then, as if he had thought of something, a light flashed in his eyes, and an enormous sense of joy and disbelief instantly covered his entire face. His gaze was even more fervent and filled with disbelief as he stared unwaveringly at the silver-striped golden snake behind Jianshan. He couldn't help but cry out in surprise, "Silver-striped golden snake, it's actually a silver-striped golden snake." The middle-aged man's words caused the group of mercenaries behind him to be stunned, as if they hadn't reacted to what kind of magical beast the silver-striped golden snake was. But soon after, when the information regarding the silver-striped golden snake surfaced in their minds, each and every one of their expressions changed greatly. Their gazes were filled with surprise, fervor, and other complicated emotions as they all looked at the silver-striped golden snake that was only as thick as a wrist behind Jianshan. After carefully sizing it up, more and more cries of surprise that were difficult to suppress came from their mouths. Could it be that this is a silver-striped golden snake? This really is a silver-striped golden snake, just like in the legends. I never thought that we would actually encounter a silver-striped golden snake here. We're going to be rich. All kinds of cries of surprise came from the mouths of the group of mercenaries. Each and every one of them looked at the silver-striped golden snake with a fervent gaze. Their faces were filled with undisguised greed. Jianshan secretly sighed in his heart. He never thought that at such a crucial time, such an unforeseen event would occur. This was definitely the situation that he didn't want to see the most, but unfortunately, the heavens didn't let him have his way. Quickly putting away the interspatial ring, the silver-white light wind sword appeared in Jianshan's hand. Without the slightest hesitation, Jianshan's body turned into a white blur as he rushed towards the group of mercenaries in front of him. The other party had already recognized the silver-striped golden snake. With how precious the silver-striped golden snake was, there was no need to think too much about it. Jianshan was very clear in his heart that the other party would use any means necessary to snatch it away. There was simply no room for negotiation. Jianshan's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already crossed a distance of 30 meters and arrived in front of the group of mercenaries. The light wind sword in his hand pierced towards them. Good timing. The middle-aged man who was the leader of the group was not weak. He quickly recovered from the surprise of seeing the silver-striped golden snake and coldly snorted as he stared at Jianshan. Suddenly, a large sword appeared in his hand as he raised it and slashed towards Jianshan. Chapter 93. Facing Jianshan's lightning-like speed, only a few of the mercenaries were able to react. Their saint weapons appeared in their hands, and they immediately slashed at Jianshan. Jianshan didn't want to get tangled up with them. His body slightly swayed, dodging their attacks and quickly passing by them. The light wind sword in his hand was like a flash of silver as it pierced through the necks of two of them. When the silver light disappeared, the two people's bodies immediately stiffened. As the light in their eyes quickly faded, their eyes gradually became dull. On their throats, a small blood wound appeared in everyone's line of sight. In the next moment, bright red blood surged out from the wound on their throats. The two people's bodies also slowly fell to the ground. His speed didn't decrease in the slightest as he passed by the two mercenaries. In the blink of an eye, Jianshan had rushed to the back of the group of mercenaries. The weaker mercenaries became Jianshan's primary targets. Although there were 20 or so mercenaries, they weren't very strong. Most of them were either saints or great saints. Only the middle-aged man in the lead and another person had the strength of a saint master. Xianxia's feet moved in a mysterious manner, and his body was like a ghost. He quickly flashed behind the mercenaries, and as the silver light continued to flash, more and more mercenaries fell under Xianxia's light wind sword. These saint-level mercenaries were completely powerless in front of Xianxia. Facing such an extremely fast attack, their brains didn't even have time to react, let alone defend. In less than a breath's time, the saint-level mercenaries died one after another under Xianxia's sword. As for the remaining mercenaries, even the weakest of them had the strength of a great saint. Facing Xianxia's attacks, they already had the strength to resist. After killing the weakest saint, Xianxia's movements didn't stop at all. The light wind sword in his hand once again turned into a bolt of silver lightning as it pierced towards a nearby great saint mercenary. Facing this extremely fast attack, the mercenary's face turned pale. It was already too late to dodge. In a moment of desperation, he could only use the axe in his hand to block in front of him. However, the light wind sword in Xianxia's hand was like a venomous snake. Changing the direction of the sword, the light wind sword that was originally aimed at the mercenary's throat suddenly changed direction and pierced towards his heart. Pooh! This time, the great saint didn't even have time to react before the silvery white light wind sword pierced through his left chest, piercing through his heart. Just as the light wind sword pierced the mercenary's heart, Xianxia immediately pulled it out and continued to attack the rest of the mercenaries. Seeing that several of their brothers had died in such a short period of time, the remaining mercenaries were all shocked and furious. "Bastard, go to hell! Give me back my brother's life!" The remaining great saint mercenaries all shouted as they raised their saint weapons and attacked Xianxia from different directions, sealing off all of Xianxia's escape routes. The corners of Xianxia's mouth curled up into a sneer as the light wind sword emitted a hazy glow. With lightning speed, he stabbed towards the incoming saint weapon. Ding! 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 In a short moment, Xianxia had already pierced out with his sword several times, each time accurately hitting a saint weapon. When the light wind sword collided with the saint weapons of the opposing mercenaries, the sound of metal colliding rang out. It was as if there was only one sound, and it was difficult to tell the difference between the two. The moment the light wind sword collided with the saint weapons, a powerful force flowed through the light wind sword and into the opposing saint weapons. Sensing the powerful force from the saint weapon, the expressions of several great saint mercenaries changed. Then, they couldn't help but stagger backwards. None of them would have thought that the light wind sword in front of them, which was only 2 fingers thick, would contain a force that was completely different from its size. Xianxia's eyes flashed with killing intent as he took advantage of the fact that the mercenaries were still unable to regain control of their bodies. Like a ghost, Xianxia silently appeared in front of one of the mercenaries. The light wind sword in his hand was covered with a layer of sword chi as it pierced towards the mercenary's neck with lightning speed. Facing such an extremely fast attack, the mercenary who had not yet stabilized himself had no time to react. In the end, under his terrified eyes, the light wind sword had already pierced through his throat, and the bloody tip of the light wind sword came out from the other end of the mercenary's throat. At that moment, a large sword came from behind Xianxia. Xianxia's eyes flashed as he pulled out the light wind sword from the mercenary's throat. Turning around, the light wind sword in his hand was covered in a layer of hazy sword light. Like a bolt of silver lightning, he stabbed backwards at an extremely fast speed. Ding! The light wind sword, which was only 2 fingers thick, collided with a 3-inch wide greatsword in midair. The 2 saint weapons, which were completely different in size, were actually evenly matched. However, no one noticed that when the light wind sword and the greatsword collided, Xianxia's right arm, which was holding onto the light wind sword, trembled slightly. Turning his gaze, Xianxia coldly stared at the owner of the greatsword. He saw that the owner of the greatsword was the middle-aged man who had been walking at the front of the group of mercenaries. But at this time, the middle-aged man's face was extremely gloomy as he looked at Xianxia with eyes filled with killing intent. "Ha! The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with killing intent as he let out a shout. His left hand formed into a fist as he punched towards Genshin's face. Genshin's eyes flashed with a cold light as the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. Facing the middle-aged man's punch, Genshin did not dodge. Instead, his left hand formed a palm and fearlessly met the middle-aged man's fist. Pang! When the fist and palm collided, the powerful force contained within erupted, emitting a muffled sound. At the point where the two palms collided, a powerful force shot out and spread in all directions. Under the devastation of this invisible force, the surrounding weeds and trees began to sway. Some of the weeds that were closer to the two of them were pressed down to the point where they bent over and fell to the ground. As for Genshin and the middle-aged man, they were both pushed back by the force of the collision. In the end, they stood facing each other with a distance of 10 meters between them. The middle-aged man's face was gloomy as he stared at Genshin with eyes filled with killing intent. He said in a deep voice, "Brat, your movements are really fast. Your attacks are really ruthless." At this time, the remaining great saints gathered behind the middle-aged man and looked at Genshin with eyes filled with shock and anger. Genshin coldly stared at the group of mercenaries, but he didn't say anything. Now that they had discovered the silver-striped golden snake, Genshin had no choice but to silence them. With the experience of his past life, Genshin was not a greenhorn. He knew very well that once the matter of the silver-striped golden snake was spread, it would definitely bring him endless trouble. After all, the silver-striped golden snake was just too precious. It was so precious that some of the major powers of the Tianyuan continent would not hesitate to go to war in order to obtain it. Once he was hunted down by them, it would definitely be more miserable than being hunted down by the Huayan sect. Genshin definitely did not want to see such a situation. Therefore, taking advantage of this opportunity, Genshin had to kill everyone present to completely prevent the information about the silver-striped golden snake from spreading. The group of mercenaries only had 11 people left. Aside from the middle-aged man who had the strength of a Saint Master, there was another 30-year-old youth who also had the strength of a Saint Master. In this group, only these two people could pose a threat to Genshin. Seeing that Genshin was not speaking, the middle-aged man was disinclined to say anything else and loudly ordered, "Brothers, everyone attack together. Not only will we be able to avenge our fallen brothers, but we will also be able to obtain the silver-striped golden snake. Once we obtain the silver-striped golden snake, we will no longer have to risk our lives to hunt magical beasts in the magical beast mountain range just to earn some money." After saying that, the middle-aged man took the lead and rushed towards Genshin. Behind him, the great Saint Master mercenaries also followed closely behind. Genshin did not say anything, but the battle intent in his heart had unknowingly soared. Immediately after, he raised his light wind sword and quickly rushed towards the group of mercenaries. Seeing Genshin rushing towards him, the middle-aged man's eyes flashed with a strong killing intent. Immediately after, he raised his large sword and slashed towards Genshin's head. Genshin's face revealed a cold smile. He did not come into contact with the middle-aged man. Immediately after, he changed his pace and went around the middle-aged man's large sword, rushing towards the group of mercenaries who were much weaker than him. Towards this move of Genshin's, the middle-aged man was clearly on guard since he had suffered a loss before. Suddenly, he changed the direction of his large sword and used brute force to forcefully change the direction of his attack. Afterwards, the large sword followed Genshin's figure as he passed by him. It continued to sweep towards Genshin. The large sword's speed was not slow either. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived behind Genshin. Finally, accompanied by a strong gust of wind, it cut through Genshin's waist without any resistance. Chapter 94. Dodging the middle-aged man's sword, Genshin's body flashed as he appeared in front of the Saint Realm mercenaries. His light wind sword was as fast as lightning as he stabbed out. At the same time, the mercenaries raised their saint weapons and slashed towards Genshin. Ding ding ding! The sounds of weapons colliding rang out. In a short period of time, Genshin had already stabbed out more than 10 times, deflecting the saint weapons of the mercenaries. Afterwards, Jianshan didn't hesitate in the slightest. The light wind sword in his hand emitted a hazy glow as he took advantage of the fact that the mercenaries were trying to regain control of their saint weapons. Once again, the light wind sword turned into a silver-white streak of lightning and stabbed out. Pooh! 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 In a short period of time, Jianshan's light wind sword had stabbed out 3 times, each time accurately hitting a mercenary's throat. The 3 mercenaries' bodies suddenly stiffened as blood gushed out from their throats. In a blink of an eye, their necks were dyed red as their bodies slowly fell to the ground. At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the air. Feeling the sudden attack, Jianshan's body immediately spun and moved 2 meters to the side. However, before Jianshan could stabilize himself, another sharp gust of wind rushed towards him. In a blink of an eye, it was right in front of Jianshan. Jianshan's expression didn't change as he raised his light wind sword to block. Dang! A large sword fiercely struck Jianshan's light wind sword. The terrifying force from the large sword caused Jianshan's body to uncontrollably fly back a few meters. So, at the same time that Jianshan's body flew back, a 3-meter-long silver spear followed closely behind him. With an ear-piercing sound, it pierced towards Jianshan's heart. Feeling the powerful saint force from the silver spear, Jianshan's expression couldn't help but become more serious. The second saint master in this group of mercenaries had finally made his move. Jianshan exerted force with his feet, leaving a deep footprint on the ground as he forcibly stopped himself from retreating. His right arm suddenly shook as the 2-finger-thick light wind sword met the silver spear head-on. Ding! The tip of the light wind sword and the silver spear collided in midair. Seeing this, Jianshan's eyes flashed with a cold light as a sharp sword chi shot out from the light wind sword and traveled along the silver spear towards the 30-year-old youth. Sensing Jianshan's intention, the youth's face revealed a disdainful sneer. Immediately after, a large amount of saint force gushed out from his body and rushed towards the light wind sword. As for Jianshan's sword chi, it was immediately blocked by the youth's large amount of saint force, causing it to quickly weaken. Jianshan's eyes flashed with a sharp light. It seemed that he was also going to compete with the youth. Immediately after, an even more powerful and sharp sword chi gushed out from the light wind sword and rushed towards the youth's large amount of saint force. Boom! When Jianshan's unique sword chi collided with the youth's saint force, a low rumbling sound rang out. Immediately after, a berserk energy spread out from the point of contact between the 2 saint weapons, wreaking havoc in all directions. Jianshan and the youth's body were both pushed back by the powerful force. Every time the youth took a step back, he would leave a deep footprint on the ground. On the other hand, Jianshan's body seemed to be incomparably agile. His feet touched the ground and his body swayed left and right, quickly dispersing the chi that was pushing him back. However, just as Jianshan stabilized his body, a fierce chi came from behind him and closed in on him in the blink of an eye. Jianshan's face changed slightly. He had used up quite a lot of energy when he clashed with the spear-wielding young man earlier. Right now, he was completely exhausted, so he was unable to use enough saint force to block the powerful attack from the saint master behind him. In a moment of desperation, Jianshan rolled on the ground to dodge the attack. Even though that was the case, a bone-deep wound still appeared on his back from the huge sword. Ha! The youth with the large sword did not show any mercy and once again raised his large sword towards Jianshan. Feeling the burning pain from his back, Jianshan clenched his teeth and slapped the ground with his left hand. His whole body immediately spun up from the ground and then slightly leaned his body to the side, dodging the youth's large sword by a hair's breadth. The youth with the light wind sword in his hand was like a bolt of lightning, piercing towards the youth with extreme speed. The youth with the light wind sword was startled. He had just attacked with his saint weapon and at this critical moment, it was already too late for him to withdraw it. In a moment of desperation, the youth with the light wind sword slightly tilted his head and narrowly dodged the sword that was aimed at his throat. Even though he had dodged a fatal blow, his neck was still cut by the light wind sword. Jianshan's face revealed a cold smile. With a twist of his wrist, the light wind sword continued to chase after the youth. Before the youth could even react, The light wind sword had already cut across his neck. Following the flash of silver light from the youth's neck, the youth with the light wind sword froze in place as blood began to flow out from his neck. The youth with the light wind sword stared at Xianxia in disbelief. He raised his hand with great difficulty and pointed at Xianxia with trembling fingers. It seemed as if he wanted to say something, but the wound on his neck prevented him from saying anything. In the end, he was unable to say anything and his body fell to the ground. Seeing the youth lying on the ground, the rest of the mercenaries' faces all changed. Some of them even looked at Xianxia with a rarely seen look of fear. After killing the youth, Xianxia did not give the rest of the mercenaries any time to catch their breaths. With the light wind sword in hand, he once again charged towards the rest of the mercenaries. Seeing Xianxia charging towards them, the only remaining Saint Master among the mercenaries immediately blocked in front of Xianxia. The silver spear in his hand became a blur as he attacked Xianxia. As for the rest of the Saint Masters, when they saw that the Saint Master had died under Xianxia's sword, none of them dared to move forward. In their hearts, they were already thinking of retreating. If it wasn't for the fact that there was another Saint Master present, they would have already fled. Ding ding ding! The sounds of collisions echoed throughout the quiet forest. In just a few seconds, Xianxia and the youth had exchanged more than 10 blows. Now that there was no one else to hold them back, Xianxia relied on the sharpness of his sword qi and his speed to gain the upper hand. In the blink of an eye, the youth was forced into a defensive position. This was because Xianxia's sword was simply too fast. It was so fast that the youth did not dare to attack and could only passively defend. Otherwise, by the time he attacked, Xianxia's light wind sword would have already pierced through his body. Moreover, facing Xianxia who was so close to him, the youth was unable to use his spear to its full potential. He felt as if his hands and feet were tied. After reaching the Saint Master realm, Xianxia's battle prowess had also increased by several times. Now that he had the advantage, he was able to fight against a Saint Master who was one level higher than him. After a dozen or so exchanges, Xianxia and the young man separated once again. However, the young man seemed to be in a much worse shape now. His clothes had been completely destroyed, and there were a few bone-deep wounds on his body. There was an extremely thin sword mark on his neck, which just happened to cut through a layer of skin there. On the other hand, Xianxia did not seem to have changed much apart from the bloody wound on his back. His face was just a bit pale. Staring at Xianxia with a serious expression, the youth shouted, "The enemy is too strong. I will stop him. Everyone quickly escape." After the previous exchange, the youth knew that Xianxia was ruthless. He knew that it was very likely that he would not be able to leave this place alive. Thus, he immediately made the worst decision possible. His heart was as clear as snow. He knew that once they knew about the silver-striped golden snake, in order to keep this secret, Xianxia would definitely kill them all, not letting a single one of them leave this place alive to spread the news. Because if it was him, he would also do the same. This was the rule of survival in the Tianyuan continent. Everything was decided by strength. Whoever had the biggest fist would have the last laugh. Hearing the young man's words, the rest of the mercenaries were shocked. They immediately fled the area as fast as they could, fleeing in all directions. Seeing the mercenaries flee in all directions, Xianxia's face suddenly sank. Holding his sword, he once again charged towards the youth. "Ah!" The youth let out a shout as he fearlessly charged towards Xianxia. With Xianxia's speed, he knew that it would be very difficult for him to escape today. Rather than that, he might as well leave his life behind to buy time for the other mercenaries. Once they spread the news about the silver-striped golden snake, there would be someone to avenge him. Ding! The light wind sword and the long spear collided in midair, creating a dazzling spark. Under the youth's control, the long spear flicked towards the light wind sword. Immediately, Xianxia's light wind sword was flicked high into the air by the long spear. Seeing this, the youth was stunned for a moment. However, his eyes immediately revealed a trace of ecstasy. He immediately controlled the long spear to pierce towards Xianxia's throat. Xianxia's mouth revealed a trace of disdain. His powerful saint force immediately covered his palms. Both of his palms turned into a blur as he tightly grabbed onto the long spear. At the same time, the light wind sword that was still ascending into the air suddenly stopped. Immediately after, an even sharper and more powerful sword chi appeared around the light wind sword, enveloping the light wind sword. With a flash of silver light, the light wind sword pierced through the air at an extremely fast speed. With an ear-piercing screech, the light wind sword pierced through the youth's throat and disappeared into the forest behind him. Ah! At the same time, several miserable shrieks came from the surrounding forest. Chapter 95. Using the Sword of God, Xianxia managed to kill the young man with the strength of a Saint Master by taking him by surprise. Even the fleeing mercenaries were unable to escape successfully. They all died at Xianxia's hands. A silver-white streak of light flashed out of the forest and flew towards Xianxia with lightning speed. Xianxia extended his hand slightly and received the incoming streak of light. In just a short moment, the streak of light had arrived before Xianxia's hand and suddenly stopped. It turned into a silver-white sword that radiated with surging sword chi. When Xianxia reached out to grab the hilt of the light wind sword, the light wind sword suddenly disappeared without a trace. After that, the light wind sword also disappeared from Xianxia's hand. Phew! Xianxia let out a long breath. After going through 2 battles in a row, he was not as relaxed as he seemed on the surface. After killing the silver-striped golden snake, he had also killed 2 Saint Masters who were as strong as him, causing the Saint force in his body to be almost completely depleted. If it weren't for the fact that the Azulate Sword Codex he cultivated was extraordinary, allowing the Saint force in his body to reach a miraculous state of endless growth, Xianxia probably wouldn't have been able to handle the next battle after killing the silver-striped golden snake. Xianxia slightly twisted his body. Just as he was about to move, the wound on his back suddenly felt a burning pain. The intense pain caused Xianxia's facial muscles to twitch a few times. It really hurts, Xianxia muttered to himself. With a thought, the powerful divine sword immediately controlled the Saint Chi in the air and gathered it towards him. Gradually, a layer of hazy white light appeared around Xianxia's body. As the Saint Chi continued to increase, the white light became brighter and brighter. In less than 2 breaths of time, the hazy white light had completely turned into a dazzling milky white light. Although the light was very dazzling, it was very gentle and not dazzling to the eyes. Bathed in the dazzling milky white light, Xianxia's body was faintly discernible. It was already very difficult to see his appearance. The deep wound on his back that was so deep that it could be seen to the bone was healing at a visible rate under the effects of the Saint Chi. Under the envelopment of the Saint Chi, a comfortable feeling spontaneously arose from the bottom of Xianxia's heart. Very quickly, it spread throughout his entire body. Even with Xianxia's mental fortitude, he could not help but tremble. Although Xianxia had already used the Saint Chi to resist the spread of the silver-striped golden snake's poison, at that time, Xianxia's mind was completely tense. He was constantly on guard against the silver-striped golden snake, so he did not have the mind to feel the comfortable feeling of being enveloped by the Saint Chi. Now that his mind was completely relaxed, Xianxia finally understood that being enveloped by the Saint Chi was actually a very comfortable feeling. The Saint Chi only lasted for a short while before gradually disappearing. Xianxia's figure also reappeared in his line of sight. Xianxia twisted his body and then extended his hand to touch the wound on his back. It was smooth to the touch. Aside from the moist feeling of his blood-soaked clothes, he did not feel any pain at all. Xianxia could not even find a single scar on the wound on his back. Nodding his head in satisfaction, Xianxia could not help but smile happily. The Saint Chi really did have an unbelievably miraculous effect when it came to healing. With this technique, Xianxia would have even more methods to protect himself on the Tianyuan continent in the future. However, at this moment, a wave of dizziness suddenly appeared in Xianxia's head. Xianxia's head swayed slightly, but he stabilized it very quickly. At the same time, a wave of exhaustion suddenly assaulted Xianxia's mind. At this moment, Xianxia felt like an ordinary person who had not slept for an entire day and night. His mind was severely lacking, and he wanted to immediately find a bed to sleep comfortably. Oh no, using my soul to control swords and radiant Saint Qi in the surroundings takes an extremely large toll on my soul. I've clearly used up too much of my soul. Genshin's heart sank slightly as he exclaimed inside. At the same time, he understood that it would be best if he used his soul to control swords and gather radiant Saint Qi sparingly in the future. Otherwise, once he used up too much of his soul, it would greatly affect his ability to unleash his full strength. Fortunately, although Genshin's soul was severely depleted, it was not at a critical point. It would not affect his ability to unleash his full strength. Genshin took out a set of clean clothes from his space pouch and changed into them. He glanced past the mercenaries on the ground before looking at the space pouches around their waists. A gleam of anticipation flashed through his bright eyes. I hope there are some good things in there, Genshin thought to himself. On the Tianyuan continent, the majority of people kept all their belongings in their space pouches. It could be said that a space pouch could very well contain all of a person's wealth. Of course, some of the weaker mercenaries were pitifully poor and did not have anything decent on them. Genshin did not touch the space pouches on the mercenaries. Instead, he quickly walked over to the silver-striped golden snake and took out a space ring from his bosom. He placed the snake inside the space ring. However, the silver-striped golden snake's body was just too long. Genshin spent an entire incense stick's worth of time to completely place it into the space ring. Only when he hung the space ring on his chest did Genshin let out a sigh of relief. He could not hide the joy he felt inside. Invulnerable to poison. Invulnerable to poison. Genshin's mind constantly recalled the various benefits of invulnerable to poison. Now that he had a complete silver-striped golden snake in his hands, the rest of the snake's blood was perfectly preserved in the snake's body. It could be said that as long as he had enough time, Genshin could use the snake's blood and gallbladder to cultivate an invulnerable to poison using a special method. Slowly calming himself down, Genshin walked over to the mercenaries' corpses and removed the space pouches from their waists one by one. Finally, after confirming that there were no other items on their bodies, he slowly left the place and disappeared into the forest. Genshin found an empty spot and sat down cross-legged after leaving the place where the fight had taken place. He then took out the 20-plus space pouches and began to tidy up the items inside. There were a lot of things inside the space pouches. Most of them were necessities for survival in the wild, such as blankets, tents, food, drinking water. Just these alone took up half of the space in the space pouches. They were all worthless items with only a pitiful few gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins scattered in a corner of the space pouches. However, Genshin was too lazy to even look at this amount of money. After continuously rummaging through several space pouches, Genshin actually did not find a single valuable item in these space pouches. These space pouches only contained some worthless daily necessities and some healing medicines. There was not even a single rank 1 monster core. Genshin did not show the slightest sign of discouragement. He was very clear that since this group of mercenaries hunted magical beasts for a living in the forest, their belongings were naturally pitifully small. If he wanted to find anything valuable on them, he was afraid that he would only find some low-rank monster cores. After continuously rummaging through more than 10 space pouches, Genshin finally found a small pile of monster cores in one of the space pouches. There were a total of 10 monster cores, but almost all of them were rank 1 or 2. Genshin took out the monster cores from the space pouches and continued to rummage through the rest of the space pouches. Very quickly, more than 20 space pouches were rummaged through by Genshin. Genshin casually threw these low-rank space pouches to the side and stared at the small pile of monster cores and the small amount of money in front of him. His face could not help but reveal a trace of helplessness. From the 20-plus space belts, he only found 20-plus magic cores and a total of nearly 100 purple coins. Among the 20-plus magic cores, only one was a grade 3 magic core, 6 were grade 2 magic cores, and the rest were all grade 1 magic cores. Looking at the monster cores in front of him with a bitter smile, Genshin helplessly shook his head. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Isn't this a little too low? A team with 2 Saint Masters' strength actually only obtained so few monster cores. It's not even as much as what I get in a day. Afterwards, Xianxia put these monster cores and the small amount of money into his space pouch one after another, got up and left this place. For the next period of time, Xianxia continued to wander in the magical beast forest. However, after the chase with the silver-striped golden snake, he was now close to the depths of the magical beast mountain range. The magical beasts that appeared here were almost all rank 3 in strength. Rank 2 magical beasts were already very rare. As for the rank 3 magical beasts, the threat to Xianxia who had broken through to the Great Saint Realm had weakened a lot. Although it was a little laborious to kill them, the harvest here was much more abundant than hunting rank 2 magical beasts. This was because a rank 3 monster core contained 10 times the energy of a rank 2 monster core. Moreover, in terms of purity, it was also much higher than rank 2 magical beasts. With Xianxia's current consumption for cultivation, 3 rank 3 monster cores were enough for him to use for a night. Even so, the consumption rate was still astonishing. In the blink of an eye, Xianxia had stayed in the magical beast forest for another 10 days. During these 10 days, Xianxia still walked in the mountain range to hunt magical beasts during the day and found a safe and hidden place to cultivate at night. After these 10 days of cultivation, Xianxia's strength also improved rapidly. Although his strength was still at the beginner Great Saint Realm, he clearly felt that he was not far from the intermediate Great Saint Realm. Chapter 96. In these 10 days, although the number of Class 3 magical beasts that Xianxia had hunted couldn't be compared to the number of magical beasts he had hunted in Kargath Academy, his harvest was still very large. On average, Xianxia had harvested about 20 Class 3 magic cores in a day, and a small number of Class 2 magic cores as well. With the 3 Class 3 magic cores that Xianxia required for his daily cultivation, his harvest in a day was enough to support his cultivation needs for 7 days. What Xianxia didn't know was that because he was walking alone in the Magic Beast Mountain range, the chances of encountering magical beasts were much higher than the mercenaries who came in groups. This was because many of these magical beasts were born with an extremely sensitive sense of smell and vigilance. Moreover, they were born in the forest, and their ability to track people was also very outstanding. Once they sensed a group that was too strong and had a large number of people, these magical beasts would either be cautious or immediately run far away. Although these magical beasts didn't have any intelligence, their instincts to survive in the Magic Beast Mountain range had already been deeply ingrained in their minds. If they encountered someone who wasn't strong and was alone, these magical beasts that were hiding in the dark would usually take the initiative to find them after thinking that they could take them down. There was simply no need to deliberately search for them. Therefore, Xianxia was able to encounter so many magical beasts in a single day in this huge Magic Beast Mountain range. If it wasn't for Xianxia's extremely powerful spirit that could precisely detect the movements in his surroundings, perhaps he would have already been beaten black and blue by these magical beasts. Early the next morning, Xianxia, who was sitting cross-legged under a large tree in cultivation, slowly opened his eyes. He then stood up from the ground and patted some dust off his body before checking the magic cores in his space belt. During this period of time, he had obtained quite a number of magic cores from hunting magical beasts in the Magic Beast Mountain range. Even after deducting the magic cores that he had consumed during his cultivation, he still had quite a lot of stock in his space ring. There are still more than 50 Class 2 magic cores, and more than 120 Class 3 magic cores. After checking his space belt, Xianxia nodded with satisfaction. Currently, he needed to consume more than 20 Class 2 magic cores for a night of cultivation. The magic cores in his space belt were enough for him to cultivate for 2 nights, and the 120 Class 3 magic cores were enough for him to cultivate for 40 nights. Of course, if he were to continuously absorb the energy from the magic cores to cultivate for the entire day, then all these magic cores would only be enough for him to cultivate for 10 days. There are also 2 Class 4 magic cores. One was obtained when I won an award at Kargath Academy, and the other was given to me by Father before I left. The energy within a Class 4 magic core is much higher than a Class 3 magic core. I wonder how long I can use a class 4 magic core. Xianxia thought to himself. Unknowingly, the monster cores he possessed were a great fortune to any other mercenary. However, in Xianxia's eyes, they were only enough to sustain him for 10 days of cultivation. Xianxia looked up at the blazing sun that was slowly rising in the sky. After determining his position, he didn't even eat breakfast and once again set off on his journey, cautiously making his way towards the outskirts of the mountain range of magical beasts. By now, Xianxia had already been in the Magic Beast mountain range for quite some time, and the magic cores in his space ring were enough for him to use for a few days. Furthermore, after these few days of consumption, Xianxia's supplies were running low. Therefore, he had to return to Wake City to replenish his supplies. Most importantly, the silver-striped golden snake that Xianxia had placed in his space ring had to be dealt with urgently. Otherwise, if it was left for too long, who knew what unpredictable situations might occur, such as the decomposition of the corpse and other factors. Xianxia had never read about this in any books, so to be on the safe side, Xianxia decided to deal with the silver-striped golden snake as soon as possible. In the Magic Beast mountain range, magic beasts roamed everywhere, and the smell of blood was especially sensitive to them. Dealing with the silver-striped golden snake here was undoubtedly very unwise. Therefore, regarding the matter of the silver-striped golden snake, Xianxia could only make plans after returning to Wake City. Not only were the weeds in the Magic Beast mountain range very dense, but there were also many swamps that were covered by the weeds. It was very difficult to see them from the surface, so Xianxia was very careful as he walked. During these few days, Xianxia had also fallen into a swamp several times, but in the end he was able to successfully escape. With the sun in the sky as his guide, Xianxia did not deviate from the path on his way out of the Magic Beast mountain range. After walking like this for 2 days, he finally made it out of the Magic Beast mountain range and arrived at a plain outside the forest. During these 2 days, Xianxia's space belt had also gained a few rank 1 and 2 magic cores. Taking in a few deep breaths of the fresh air that was completely different from the air in the Magic Beast mountain range, Xianxia lowered his head to look at the clothes he was wearing that were completely made of animal hide and his body that was emitting a towering stench of sweat. His face couldn't help but reveal a trace of a bitter smile. Right now, his appearance was even worse than that of a beggar. It was a pity that there wasn't much water in the Magic Beast mountain range, so Xianxia had no way to wash off the smell of sweat on his body. Not far from the outskirts of the Magic Beast mountain range, there just happened to be a river. Xianxia quickly found the river according to his memory. He immediately took off the animal hide on his body and jumped into the rapidly flowing river, refreshing his body. The stench of sweat that had accumulated on his body over the past few days had almost formed a layer of armor on his body. Every time Xianxia moved his body, he would feel extremely uncomfortable. The slippery and sticky feeling on his body made him feel very uncomfortable. However, because he was in the Magic Beast mountain range, Xianxia endured it. Now that he saw the river, he couldn't help but jump in. Xianxia wrapped the space belt around his neck and sunk his entire body into the water, happily rubbing his body. As his hands continuously rubbed, the river water around his body was immediately tainted black. After washing his body, Xianxia didn't leave the river. Instead, his entire body lazily lay in the river water, slightly closing his eyes and allowing the surging river water to wash over his body. At this moment, his mind was completely relaxed, enjoying the cool feeling of the river water washing over his body. During the past few days in the Magic Beast mountain range, he had been constantly vigilant, causing Xianxia to feel a wave of mental exhaustion. Now that he was relaxed, the relaxed and comfortable feeling that came from the depths of his soul made Xianxia want to sleep comfortably. Xianxia closed his eyes and lazily laid in the river water, bathing in the warm sunlight. His naked body was constantly lifted up and down by the waves of the river, slowly being carried downstream by the river water. The downstream of the river just happened to be in the direction of Wake City, so Xianxia completely treated this as a free ride. Not only could he hurry along, but he could also take advantage of this time to enjoy himself. Xianxia had completely forgotten about the time. He didn't know how long his body had been carried by the flowing river water. However, at this moment, Jianshan felt his head hit something soft. Moreover, from the feeling of his head hitting something soft, Jianshan knew that when his head hit that soft thing, it seemed to move a little, as if it was alive. A living thing. Jianshan's originally drowsy mind suddenly became alert, and in an instant, he became awake. Even his originally calm spirit became active at this moment. Every movement around him was transmitted into Jianshan's mind, and in a short moment, he went from being drowsy to being highly focused. Jianshan's originally closed eyes suddenly opened, and suddenly, 2 faint rays of light flashed in his eyes. Following that, Jianshan suddenly flipped over, and his originally drifting body immediately stood up. His entire body floated in the river water, and only his upper body was above the water. However, just as Jianshan finished this action, a human face appeared in front of his eyes. This was a woman's face, and her appearance was devastatingly beautiful. Her face was as white as mutton fat, and her exquisite facial features were flawless. No one could find any fault with her, as if she was a fairy descending from the heavens. From the woman's devastatingly beautiful appearance, she didn't look very old, about 18 or 19 years old. At this moment, she was staring at Jianshan with her big black and bright eyes, and was looking at Jianshan with a sluggish gaze. The pair of large breasts on her chest were exposed to the air, and were only a wide distance away from Jianshan's chest. Damn, there's actually a woman taking a bath here. Jianshan immediately came to his senses, and his face immediately darkened. His experience from his previous life allowed him to instantly understand what was going on in front of him. He never would have thought that while he was drifting along the river, he would take advantage of this opportunity to take a good rest and relax the high level of concentration he had in the past few days in the magical Beast Mountain range. Unknowingly, he would be swept by the flowing river water to a woman taking a bath. Just as Jianshan came to his senses, the woman who was staring at him also suddenly came to her senses. Immediately, a sharp scream came from her mouth. "You stinking hooligan!" The woman's originally sluggish eyes were now filled with raging anger and shame. With a shout, her palm struck towards Jianshan's chest at lightning speed. Peng! Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.